And good evening from the land of enchantment, the kind of soggy land of enchantment tonight. And welcome to the other side of midnight. You know, when I picked the title for this, I was kind of thinking of sometimes we'll do programs that are the antithesis of what Art is doing on the other side of midnight. But tonight what we're going to do is to shift gears. We're going to move into a different kind of headspace. And I will introduce my guest tonight shortly because we've got a very full evening of a couple of hours or early morning to talk about something which could in fact transform the planet, as some of the technologies we've been discussing in the last couple of weeks could well do. And this one seems to be on the verge of making some serious commercial breakthroughs. So we will get into that shortly because we're going to be talking about the very controversial and frankly I think misnamed area of so-called free energy. And I'm going to get into definitions of that word and how that word came to kind of stand for an entire field. But before we do that, I want to relate to you a couple of stories that people have been sending me via email. People are finding it difficult to stay up for the entire show. Gosh, I wonder why. They have to go to work the next morning, they've got practice, they've got commutes, they've got, whatever people do during the daytime that us night people don't normally participate in at those ungodly hours. So they're kind of falling asleep in front of their computers. Now, we know this because with computers you can track the numbers. And the curve of decreasing listenership is a very straight line from about midnight to dawn. And that means people aren't turning off their devices. They're just kind of falling asleep over them or in front of them or beside them or whatever. So, look, there is a remedy for this because a lot of people are complaining that they didn't get to hear the end of some interview or some story I was telling or someone I was talking to. So the answer is really simple. If you go to the Other Side of Midnight webpage, othersideofmidnight.com, over on the right-hand side, you will see, if you scroll a little way down, you will see two areas, two highlighted configurations, one marked Listen Live and the other marked Subscribe, or Archive, Show Archives, I think. That's the one you want to click on because if you subscribe to the Other Side of Midnight and you do fall asleep in the middle of the show, then you can pick up what we're talking about at any time, asynchronous, on your schedule, not ours, and you have the best of both worlds. So I would strongly recommend that as many people in many places as are listening around the planet tonight, or this morning, or this afternoon, wherever you happen to be on the rotating globe, take a look at the archive and see if you can keep track of us that way. Because in the coming days and weeks, we're going to have some really intriguing and quite surprising guests that you wouldn't normally think that I would want to talk to. In fact, one of them lives, and if she's listening, she sent me a book a few weeks ago at my request, and I'm kind of dipping into it here and there. And in the next few days, I'm going to call her up and have her on as a guest, and you will be quite, I think, intrigued with the subject of our conversation, because it's not something that maybe some of you would expect that I would normally be intrigued with. Well, I am, as you will hear. Anyway, tonight our guest is Sterling D. Allen. I could go on and on and on about Mr. Allen's background and what he has accomplished and why he is on the quest and mission that he's on, but probably it's better to let Sterling take over. So all I will say is that he is now head of several important advocacy and grassroots organizations that are pushing this concept of free energy. And so without further ado, Sterling, welcome to the show.
Great to be on with you. Thank you.
Tell me something. How did a guy who started out in biology, in virology, in Arizona at the university, how did he wind up promoting and pushing alternative energy systems, including something which is definitely persona non grata in the mainstream community, so-called free energy?
Well, I fell outside the box in the middle of graduate school. I decided I needed to help save the world with all those others out there. And So I've been outside the box most of my adult life, and you know how it goes. When you're outside the box, everything is really enticing.
Yes, it's called the poverty of riches.
Yep.
So you were in biology, and you were doing graduate work, and I mean, I don't see the transition, because to me, I've liked astronomy, I've liked physics, I've liked celestial mechanics, I like planetology, I like chemistry. I really am not a biologist. I've never really resonated with biology.
Well, the word I used for my graduate work was bioelectrochemistry. So I was studying the interaction of electromagnetic fields and human cell systems.
Okay, on the very small.
Right. And so, you know, I was in the arena of electricity and its interaction with the human body. So that's not too big of a leap between what I'm doing now.
Well, did you, in those experiments or lab work, did you begin to notice anomalies? Things weren't behaving the way the book said?
Well, what actually got me into that area was anomalous. I read Robert Becker's book, Body Electric.
Yes.
Yeah, and that got me intrigued. I was actually...
Remind folks who Becker was, because I had the honor of meeting him once. In fact, he actually offered me, if you can believe it, a non-biologist, he offered me a job. And I was busy doing a bunch of other stuff, and I thanked him and all that. But his work with basically regeneration, to me, was stunningly telling us something profound about the human system that it looks like we kind of had forgotten, because there are other animals in the animal kingdom that are able to regenerate, but we don't. And his examination of what can go on at that electrical potential level, it was mind-blowing. I mean, I was in the audience for a AAAS presentation he gave, and that's when we met, and when he said, "Why don't you come and work for me?" So what did you observe at that level that got you to begin to ask the dangerous questions?
Well, I was actually in virology at Brigham Young University, and I got the book Body Electric. Somebody put me onto it, and I stayed up all night reading it. I could not put it down. And the next morning, I walk up to campus, and I got on the elevator with a professor that I'd seen once or twice before, and I just, off the cuff, I said, "Do you know of any professors at BYU who are studying," and then this question, you know, the interaction of electromagnetic fields in the human body? He says, "I am." So I became this graduate student, changed my major, and then I went on down a couple of years later. I kind of went on another tangent, and then a couple of years later I got back into graduate school, went down to the University of Arizona, and was studying actually the low pH in the human body and its predisposition of cancer, which is kind of within this realm. And that was fascinating. I was primarily doing literature searches. I was working for two professors. One was coming up with artificial hemoglobin, and the other one was doing literature searches on low pH in the body. So like acidic conditions in the body from a high animal-based diet, and what that does to predisposing cells to becoming cancerous. So people were looking in the petri dish, so to speak, at what if we tweak the pH down a couple of notches, what does it do to make cancer go? And so
hang on, would this be like a major possibility for why people who are eating a conventional American diet and they hear they've got cancer and they have the screening and they are properly shocked and terrified and all this, and they want to change everything in their life that could get rid of it, and they become vegetarians. And that changes the pH level of their system, and that's why there are these cases of remission with people changing drastically like that?
Absolutely. And I can tell you that in the scientific literature, which is what I was looking at for things along these lines, there's reams and reams of evidence to support that.
So this is peer-reviewed literature.
Call it that. They don't put it together like you just did.
Why not?
Because I'm going to tell you a story. The other professor I was working for, artificial hemoglobin, a couple of years later, I sent her a letter. I said, hey, how's it going? And she wrote me a letter back. She said, well, we're finding that in our clinical studies that too many people are dying from this. It's like,
what? They're dying from what?
From they're making artificial hemoglobin, trying to come up with a way to, give people artificial blood. And kind of like the GMOs of your blood infusion,
right?
And the way she said it was so callous. It's kind of like these Planned Parenthood videos that are coming out, where people are talking about selling body parts as if it's just like any other little thing.
Well, if you talk to doctors, remember, I live with one. And the shocking horror stories of how patients are dealt with verbally behind the scenes, how they're viewed. I mean, if you knew how doctors view you as a patient, you may not go back to that guy or gal because they really have a very low opinion of patients. And they do see them. But you see, I think it's kind of psychologically got to be that way, because if you connect with every patient and the usual curve of people who are not going to make it is part of your experience, how long could you maintain any kind of mental sanity unless you erect some kind of barriers?
Right. Yeah. And so, granted, there is that factor, but I do think that science does tend to get that way. They get disconnected with God. They get disconnected. Like, what is it? 93% of scientists are agnostic or atheist in the United States.
I've seen numbers all over the place. That one, what's the source of that?
It's in my dad's book. It's about time. He's an atomic clock physicist, a world-renowned timekeeper.
In Boulder?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Boulder. He was over at NIST.
Gosh, I should ask him why we have to keep adding leap seconds. No, that's a big deal, and no one wants to talk about it.
My dad would be the expert to talk
Tom
about
Van
that.
Flandern wouldn't talk to me about it when I asked him one night. Anyway, so you're in viriology, you wind up in physiology. How did you get to the idea that there's more energy than from, digging up old dinosaurs, using the ancient metaphor?
Well, that came actually years later. I've been in this for 13 years, immersed. From the time I got into it, I just was totally taken by it.
I'm still looking for the aha moment that moved you from dealing with biological systems to dealing with engineering and physics, and obviously you ran into the political firestorm of doing any of this stuff, right?
Yeah, well, I was doing religio-political studies, commentary, prophecy about end times, getting ready for the world to fall apart.
Oh, really? What year was this?
This was back through about a decade leading up to 2001, the World Trade Center bombings, and I got involved with Joel Skousen doing, I started an organization called Remnant Saints Intercontinental Congress, saying the United Nations, there is such a thing as world government. Rather than going to a socialist-based United Nations solution, let's do a freedom-based Constitution-esque world body, and let's come up with some documents for it. And so I founded that, and that wasn't making ends meet. I needed something to make a living, and meanwhile I was doing these religio-political studies. Somebody sent me a link to this guy in Johannesburg who had come up with a magnet motor, and I said, hey, I don't have anything free energy on my website. I'll put something up there. And so I created at greaterthings.com, I created a page on free energy, and that ended up just consuming me.
So you basically turned out to be an activist in the making, going through the sciences to kind of understand the lingo and how scientists think and all that, but you really, your calling was much different and much bigger.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And plus, another thing that drove me was I just had this impression that I should stick with whatever I chose to go with. I should just stick with it. And this free energy came into my life, and that just grabbed me like a magnet, and I stuck to it.
Well, what made you think it was real? I mean, first of all, to mention the word free and energy in the same sentence, I've always thought is a illogical non sequitur. And it's very off-putting to people. Remember Heinlein, Tannensäppel? There ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
Right.
So the concept of free energy, when I was discussing with the folks, when Robin and I were in Amsterdam a few years ago, I was discussing with the folks who are now behind the so-called breakthrough energy conferences. And I remember we had one amazing dinner there in Amsterdam where I argued strenuously, whatever you do, don't put the term free energy in the title of your conference. Think of something else that's more relevant, that describes it, but doesn't come with all the political baggage. I mean, it has been so devalued, like UFO or ufology, that we have to rethink the language. So that night we all sat around and brainstormed over this wonderful little restaurant tablecloth where we scribbled like mad. And ultimately we decided on the term breakthrough energy, because if it is adopted, it's a breakthrough that we've never seen in human histories for a very, very long time. What do you think about the politics of so-called free energy as a derogatory term?
Well, it obviously has a derogatory, baggage with it. But I'm a linguist. I love language and saying what you mean and meaning what you say. And free energy is the best, most accurate descriptor of what we're looking at.
Yeah, but wait, Sterling. It's not going to be free. It will be cheap, but it will not be free, and that's what philosophically bothers me.
So the reason I come in with the term, whenever I do an interview on free energy, I like to define it. And I say what we're talking about is the energy source is free. Devices obviously are not free. Mm-hmm. A solar panel is not free, but the sun is. Wind turbines are not free, but the wind is.
Okay. Well, to all practical purposes, but even there you're dealing with so-called conservation of energy and the equations match and all that. When you get into real free energy, the classic, turn the device on and it runs forever, that's where people have a real problem. And I think that it's based on the language. I think people turn off when proponents such as yourself talk about free energy, because in their lives, nothing ain't free.
But the thing is, you're right. The fuel is free. The device that plugs into the will work of nature is not. And so what we're looking for are methodologies that harness the will work of nature in a cheap way.
I noticed how you slipped that Tesla term in there. Would you like to define it?
The will work of nature.
Yes.
Yeah. It's basically, the sun is an easy analogy, because I list that as one of 50. There are 25 conventional free energy sources, including solar, wind, geothermal, tide, waste to energy. These are all free plugs into the will work of nature, but the devices that harness them are not free. Solar panels aren't free, inverters are not free, batteries are not free, etc.
Right.
And so how can we get a methodology that plugs into one of those 50 plugs?
In other words, an appropriate economic system that will attach itself to that structure and wind up with the consumer products that people want to buy.
Exactly. And some of those wheelworks of nature are not intermittent. Geothermal is a good example. When you dig a deep pipe into the mantle of the earth,
right,
there's a lot of energy down there. You don't
which
have
is
to
being fueled by the energy of the earth, which we think is from radioactive decay, right?
Yeah. Whatever it is, we know it's constant, and it's not going away.
And it's been there billions of years, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes, 24/7, 365, and that is not an intermittent free energy source, but it is free energy, and it's not breaking any laws of physics.
Mm-hmm. But it's not free.
But
See?
It is. The energy, the fuel is free.
See, this
the,
is
the
where
pipes are not.
I'm saying that from a political point of view, when you present people who live in the middle of the bell curve with the concept they can get something for nothing, it's like getting those phone calls and emails from Nigeria. Don't answer. So
But-
when someone
and
says,
that's
I've
why
got
I
I've got
always-
free energy," I mean, don't you understand, Sterling? That's the big political turnoff.
Right.
There
but
needs
the
to
thing
be,
is,
I think there needs to be a rethink of the terminology around this field because people know it ain't free.
the device is not, but the fuel is.
And do people separate those two? In other words, when you go to the wall switch,
Whenever I present it, I define it. And
Okay.
so just about every article I put up about this, I have a sentence where I say the wheelwork of nature is free for the taking, the device is not, something along those lines. So I am orienting people as to what I mean by the terminology.
by the way, do you want to tell people where that wonderful wheelwork of nature reference comes from?
Nikola Tesla. Yeah.
That's how he described plugging into this alternative energy system.
Yeah. The time will come that we will harness our very mechanism to the wheelwork of nature. He says something along those lines. And he was an advocate of solar and wind. He was making forward statements about those as workable plugs, so to speak. And almost all of our conventional science pages have quotations from Tesla about we ought to do this, we ought to do that. It was before we had solar panels. It was before we had, wind turbines to the extent that we do today, for example.
By the way, Tesla, might want to go into that little history between him and Edison. And while, even though we're using everything Tesla gave us, you'd be hard-pressed to hold a gun to 1 out of 100 people, and they would not know where we got 60-cycle current and where we got long-distance transmission lines and where we got all the grid infrastructure that we take for granted. It's not Edison, the guy who made the history books. It's this guy named Tesla that no one's ever heard of. Except now, of course, there's a car named after him.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks to Elon Musk, Tesla is now a household word.
Yes. So you decided you wanted to be an activist in this field. How did you decide to do as much damage as possible to the current infrastructure, politically?
Well, I don't look at it that way. I do think if there's a principle of human nature that new wine can't go into old bottles. And it's the status quo fights the new thing. And if only, modern academia would be a little more pliable and not so prideful, they could be part of the next big wave that's coming of these unconventional energy sources that harness the wheelwork of nature, these things that physics says are quote-unquote impossible, but they're working prototypes. And
well, we've been talking now solar energy, panels or heat from the sun, all that, for at least a century, maybe a little less. Hoffman was an electronics company back in the 1950s. They created the first solar cell for the first Vanguard satellite. So, and by the way, that thing is still up there. It's got a 2,000-year orbital life. That's a whole other program.
Hey, by the way, there are magnet motors of Brazil up in space too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
My point was, we've only had really government-sponsored R&D in solar cell technology since the 50s, which is like a little over half a century. And finally now we're looking at plummeting prices in the commercial solar energy market after half a century, and how many billions of dollars of investment are we finally getting something you can put on your roof and it won't break the bank, and you actually can modulate the power structures of the big Edison companies charging you for wired power to your house from the grid.
Yeah. And we're going to see that accelerate tremendously. What is the computer?
Moore's Law?
Yes.
Moore's Law, yeah. Well,
Moore's
roughly
Law.
The things get, twice as good every 18 months? I think that's Moore's Law.
And we're looking at a market penetration time of several months as opposed to years when the next big breakthrough comes along.
This is standard solar.
That is, if we don't go into meltdown as a society and our infrastructure goes to pot.
Well, that's not a thing we can maybe take for granted, right?
Absolutely. I mean, now there are so many indicators that we're headed toward off the cliff. And we've got about 5 minutes before the break. Give us an indicator. What are you concerned about? Well, the financial systems of the planet, Greece, and they're heading off a cliff, and China is plummeting, and United States is headed for a big fall. We got the Shemitah thing going on with Jonathan Kahn talking about that. We have a lot of prophetic indicators. There are market indicators. There's all kinds of things that says this fall is going to be extremely volatile.
And you don't think this could be kind of anticipatory propaganda to make certain moves in the market because a lot of people will run scared?
If that's what their agenda is, they're masterful at it.
Well, we know they're masterful. I mean, look at the last 50 years. They've managed a planet into a pretty bad state. I mean, things were not bad. They were looking up in the 50s and 60s, and then Kennedy is killed, and it's been the long march down to the primeval sea ever since.
But I do believe awakening could be in the cards. I do believe that a human conscious shift could be in the offing.
Why do you use the term could be? Aren't you looking around and seeing it's already happening?
It's in process, yeah.
I mean, why do you think Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump, two polar opposites of the polarized political spectrum, are each outside the box, outside the system, outside the mainstream, the coronated candidates, the ones that are the heirs apparent? All those people are going by the wayside, and two revolutionaries of stunningly opposite polarity are pulling extraordinary numbers and crowds and interest. And is that not telling us that the long march down to the primeval sea, in fact, is being interrupted by a word from our sponsors?
Yeah. Absolutely. I think it's exciting.
Well, but it's more than exciting. It's kind of like what you and I have been working for in separate areas for decades, would like to be around to then take advantage of. So the question then, Sterling, is how can you politically ride this wave and make people realize that being connected to huge centralized power companies is not a good idea?
Yeah, that is going to be obsoleted.
But what's the mechanism?
By these clean energy devices that plug into the will work of nature in a much cheaper, affordable way, so that you don't have to use the centralized power grid, but you can have something that's going to run your car, run your house. You buy it once, and maintenance is minimal, and it just goes and goes and goes and goes.
Okay, in the solar field now, let's say you wanted to get yourself off the grid. Do you have offhand some numbers as to what it would cost you to put in solar to replace what the power company provides you every day?
Yeah, we've got some numbers. It used to be $30,000, and now it's been dropping gradually but persistently.
Right.
And we're talking, their technology is now percolating where we could get a kilowatt that would cost $500. But it's not going to be available until we have this consciousness shift. But It is coming.
All right, let's pick up on the details of that when we come back after the break at the bottom of the hour. This is The Other Side of Midnight. You are tuned to the space between imagination and reality in the pre-dawn darkness before the coming of another day. And we'll be right back. And we are back on The Other Side of Midnight. Sterling, we were talking just before the break about the political changes that you see coming rather dramatically to emplace this idea of alternative power sources, alternative energy, alternative networks.
Actually, that's not the way I put it. I said that I see political changes being prerequisite to these things coming out in a cheaper, much cheaper, and much more ubiquitous way. Here's how I would put it. I believe we get the government and the energy we deserve. And we should stop blaming the conspiracy on the downward plummet of society, that we get the government we deserve, that the tyranny that we're getting from Barack Obama and others is an outgrowth of the wickedness and corruption we've been sowing as a civilization for decades. This downward spiral is a natural consequence. It's very, very...
Well, at the risk of going over the edge and becoming too political, what terrible sins has Barack Obama committed in the alternative energy area that you not like?
No, I'm not talking energy-wise. I'm talking, generally speaking, about civilization reaping what you sow.
But we've been doing this for hundreds of years. It's not exactly on Obama's watch.
Yeah, but it's gotten a lot worse lately in civilization. I can see a downward spiral since I've been alive. I'm 51 years old.
Yeah, but that's not limited to his 8-year administration. I just think everybody wants to blame Obama for everything. It's kind of silly.
No, it's not just Obama. I mean,
look at 19th century rampant Adam Smith capitalism. Don't you think that was a bit of a problem?
Yes.
Okay.
And I would see what it's not just the Democrats that are to blame. I mean, it's Bush and family, this conspiracy, the Illuminati trying to establish a world tyranny. They've been at it for a long time. They're very patient.
Well, let me ask you this. If they're so patient and efficient, how come you and I are having this conversation tonight? How come we've got thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people?
Because they don't have total control.
And why not? If they have more money than God, and let me give you an example. We were talking last night about Donald Trump and his billions, and I said that if you stacked $1 billion, one bill on top of the other, $1 bills, $1 billion would reach about 67 miles high. Okay? Now that's 1 billion. The debate going on about Trump is, does he have 3 billion or does he have 10 billion? If he has 3 billion, you multiply the 70 miles, we'll do it in round numbers so people can follow. So that's 210 miles of bills, dollar bills would be Donald Trump's total net worth. Or if he's really worth 10 billion, and it's hard to evaluate real estate sometimes, and there's a very interesting uncertainty factor. So if it's 10 times $1 billion, then instead of 67 miles, it would be between 670 and 700 miles of bills would equal his fortune. I heard a number this afternoon that is absolutely staggering, and that is that the Koch brothers, you're familiar, of course, with the Koch brothers, right?
Yeah, they control a lot of media and whatnot.
And they are the major fossil fuel producers in the United States of America, right? Exceeding Exxon, exceeding, Shell, exceeding Esso, exceeding, Standard Oil, Rockefellers and all that. The Koch brothers, in terms of fossil fuel, dirty energy, coal and oil and whatever, are major, major players. They have apparently, if we can believe the numbers, 40 times the wealth of Donald Trump. So it's either 3 billion times 40, or it's 10 billion times 40, which would be 400 billion. But in terms of our metaphor, it could either be 40 times 700 miles, which is something like 26,000. So their money, if you stacked all their money, all their assets end on end in a stack of dollar bills, the Koch brothers would literally be a stack of bills 26,000 miles high above the geosynchronous orbit of satellites at 22,300 miles.
And then you've got a free energy device because then you can harness this electric universe going on.
Well, but do you understand my point? Most people, they're so far down below 26,000 miles of money that their money, if you stacked it all up, maybe would reach to 20 or 30 feet max. I'm talking an annual, income. That is the disproportion of the political influence we're facing if you say we have to fundamentally redefine politics, because going through the front door with that amount of money aimed against you, it ain't gonna happen. So what's your backup plan? What's plan B?
Well, we know David and Goliath made quick work of Goliath, and it was just one little stone, this big old hotshot that thought he was all that. And we know prophecies about the weak things of the earth shall make quick work of the mighty and strong who think they're all that. And so I don't even squimish at all at the face of the Koch brothers and others. They don't even give me a second thought when I think about, who's going to win and the destiny being on the side of goodness. And so I just smile and grin going, okay, those guys think they've got it all under the bag, but we're going to win. This destiny is on our side.
Well, we're all right. On the solar area, we're winning because the prices are falling like a streamlined anvil. What is a home system now? Because I know when we put ours in, between 99 and 2000, we paid something like, I think, 20 grand to put a full system that would, power the batteries during the day, store energy for night, be able to sell some back to the power company. And that was, 15 years ago? It was about 20 grand. So what is the equivalent price now just with solar photovoltaic or gallium arsenide or whatever they're using?
I don't know for sure. I think it's closer to 15 now.
Okay.
But I don't pay a lot of attention to conventional because my focus is on unconventional.
Well, I wanted to move
25 plugs.
I wanted to move from the idea that now what used to be unreachable, impossible in terms of solar, is now doable. You can literally go out on the marketplace, and through some companies like Solar City or some government subsidies or whatever, you can have a system put in. You can actually have tax credits against it. You can be selling power back to the power company. Believe me, when you see that little rotor in your electric meter rotate backwards, that's a kind of an interesting moment. But that's all with so-called conventional solar. Why don't we now look at other things that are becoming more real, more politically palpable, that take us beyond solar to some of the exotic technologies that you and I probably want to spend the rest of the morning talking about?
Yeah. Yeah, there are technologies that are now in the marketplace. They're not percolating out there like maybe we'll go into production, and we'll have these available 5 months from now. They're actually available now. But these are for, and there's, do you want to go there?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. The company is called Rosch, R-O-S-C-H. And I asked him, where'd you get that name? He said, well, it's actually like you've heard of Rosh Hashanah. It has both Hebrew and it also has Hare Krishna kind of New Age kind of, slants to it as well.
So this is a privately held company, and they're doing what in the energy area?
They are breaking all kinds of laws of physics and making the scientists just go jumping up on mounts, fuming mad because they're taking a buoyancy effect.
So this is not a conventional battery or solar or wind or whatever.
No.
This is an alternate etheric breakthrough technology device.
Not etheric.
Okay.
This is a buoyancy effect where they're filling up a chamber, a float, with air at the bottom of a water tube, so it wants to rise, and it goes up. And as it goes up, it turns a generator, and the generator generates electricity. And the physicists are saying, hold on a second, that's not supposed to work. Because buoyancy's good, but it's not going to give you more energy out than what you put in.
Well, it shouldn't, no.
No. but this one is. The
How
way
is it?
they got it with the pulsing of the air and their generator, and they've got three proprietary aspects where their secrets are. It's not just standard pumping of air; they're pulsing it. So their air compressor is part of their IP, and their generator is part of their IP, and their controller circuit is part of their IP. And the bottom line is, it works.
So would this be for like a house in a country where you have a well? Would it be for oceans, like tidal energy? Would you use large-scale inflatable devices under the ocean to rise and fall to generate energy that way?
That's different modality.
Okay.
Wave energy is different.
No, I know wave energy is different, but I'm thinking, what bodies of water would you need to? And I still don't know how you recapture the energy once you release the air at the top. How do you get it to? In other words, it basically sinks under gravity and rises under compressed air, and the equations don't match.
No, the science behind it is just absolutely totally messed up. There's no way this is supposed to work.
Well, where for instance, do they have a YouTube video? Can we see this thing in operation?
I've seen it in operation. They flew me over to Germany last month.
Do they have YouTube so we can point the audience to where they can click on links and take a look?
Yes, they do. And we've got a page with all kinds of links for them. I can give you, I think we've got a shortcut domain name for them too.
Okay.
Let me, while we're chatting about this, I'll pull that up so that people don't have to memorize this big long URL. But if you go to PezWiki, our website, and then Rosh, so PezWiki Rosh, ROSCH, you'll find our pages about it easily. And there's a lot of videos. I've put up quite a few, and they've got some showing it in operation. And we don't have validation of this from people on the ground because these are companies that don't want their name out there. But supposedly there's 100 megawatts in operation as of 3 months ago that they have. They're going for utility scale systems. Mm-hmm. And I had a customer from last few days ago from Africa wants 2 gigawatts times 4 countries, and he's going to be flying up there to visit them soon.
So back up. These are what, brothers who have a company?
Not brothers. There's a whole bunch of very wealthy guys who brought this off the ground. They've been in research and development for several years, and they've been putting these things out there quietly. Very quietly.
Months. Where is their prototype system?
They have one in Spiech, Germany.
Okay.
Just out of Cologne, outside of Cologne. That's where I went, and I saw a 15 kilowatt system in operation. So 15 kilowatt net.
Would basically be running a house.
15 kilowatt would handle the peak load of a wealthy home most of the time.
Yeah, except if you live in Arizona or New Mexico in the summer, the air conditioning will kill you. So, okay, 15 kilowatts.
Air conditioning is 5 kilowatts.
So you got a 15 kilowatt system. Are they selling this as a standalone system for a house or a school or some small institution?
Rosh's focuses on utilities. They won't go anywhere under 200 kilowatts. And so their price point breakdown starts at 5 kilowatts.
So they're just looking to supply.
Megawatts.
They're looking to supply the centralized power people with another fuel source, in essence.
Correct.
Okay.
But that's because that's what makes sense business-wise. But they do have a sub-licensee that is providing these things for a company called Gaia Energy over in Austria. And these guys have already sold almost 500 5-kilowatt systems. Now, 5 kilowatts is a home power system. Mm-hmm. And those
Wait. I've been looking at Elon Musk's Powerwall, mm-hmm. and he's offering 7 kilowatts. I don't know whether it's 7 mm-hmm. kilowatt hours or something like that. To run what we have here and to do this show overnight, that's not big enough. we would have to have his double system, which I think is, 14 kilowatt hours. So I think you're more in the area of the 15 as opposed to the 5, because refrigeration and air conditioning takes a huge amount of energy.
Well, your typical air conditioner is going to be, when I say typical, I'm talking average, it's going to be 5 kilowatts. And that's not kilowatt hours, that's 5 kilowatts. That's what it's consuming as it's running.
Yeah, and if you run it for an hour, it's 5 kilowatt hours.
Correct.
Yeah,
that's the definition of kilowatt hours.
And during the day, here in the desert, if we don't run the air conditioning from almost dawn to dusk, you wind up boiling to death.
And through the night as well. It's extremely hot
in some places.
Yeah.
So that's a huge burden for an individual home to supplant grid power with standalone power. You say they have a system that could do this.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
5 kilowatts continuous. It's running 24/7, whether or not the sun's shining, whether or not the wind's blowing.
Right.
It is cranking out 5 kilowatts.
And mechanically, do they have to dig a well on your property? Do you have to have a property to put this in? Do you have to...
It's up to you. It's a 5-meter tube, 16 and a half feet. And so that's going to be pretty tall. So if you don't want it sticking up by the side of your house, then dig a hole.
So it's like digging a swimming pool.
Except it's only half meter by half meter in its footprint. So it's not, it's 5 meters high and half meter by half meter in girth. So it's, it's a round tube.
Okay.
So it's not that big.
If those folks are beginning to look at commercialization, what are some of the other
beginning? They're there.
Well,
they're there.
But there's no market penetration. We didn't know about them until you brought them on the show tonight. Are they primarily European? Because they're certainly not marketing over here.
I don't know of anyone in the U.S. who's bought one yet. There are, all their sales, they're German-speaking, and their group is primarily over there in Europe, and they're not trying to go outside of that. I am. We've got a sales page for the utility scales one. I was working on a sales page for the 5 kilowatt one today. I was hoping to have it done in time for this show. It's not done yet.
So if you marry this generation system, which you say is free energy because the energy is coming from somewhere, it's not just balancing the buoyancy equation versus the gravity equation?
It's probably in their generator, I'm guessing, is where most of the stuff's coming from. They may even be doing the generator as a decoy.
Okay.
I mean, the buoyancy system may be a decoy.
Well, that's an interesting thought. How much is the system? If I wanted to buy one for here, how much would I shell out?
A little over 14,000 euros.
Okay, what's the conversion rate now? 1.5, 2, something?
It's close to $1 per. Last time I was checked, is like what was it? $1. I mean, it was $1.05 per euro or something like that.
Oh, it's almost balanced then, because it used to be a lot different. Anyway,
that was as of a couple of weeks ago. I haven't checked lately.
So it's roughly $16,000. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that will
same as solar, but solar is intermittent.
Well, yeah. I mean, this would work around the clock because gravity works around the clock. Yep. If it's based on gravity, which it sounds something like a system that Napier. Remember the name Napier, the German who used to run these alternative energy conferences? That he was talking about, like in the 70s.
That was before I was into it, so that's that's not on my radar.
So let's move beyond the Roche system. And what else is out there that people could buy right now to replace the power company?
That's the only one.
Really?
And I've been on Coast a few times. I was looking at your page on Coast tonight. I didn't count the number of times, but it's like 120 times. I just did a rough guess there's about 4 per screen, and I went down how many clicks, and I multiplied them together. And I was just curious. You're coming on at the same time as Coast. What's up with that?
Well, George fired me.
Oh.
Didn't you hear that?
No, I didn't.
And he did it in the most peculiar way. I made this bet with him many years ago, like 7, 8 years ago, that Obama would win the presidency. And I've been waiting for the right time to collect on the bet, and I decided that I was going to do Pluto as the kind of matching bookend to the show that I did with Dick Bertel at WTIC 50 years ago for the Mariner 4 flyby of Pluto. And I took all this to George, and we discussed it on the air several times, and everything was go. And then I pointed out that the actual encounter of the spacecraft at the planet would be about 2.5 hours after we nominally, West Coast time, 2 o'clock, went off the air. So I suggested that we stay on the air on the West Coast, let the East Coast people tap into the streaming web version of the shows that all the major affiliates are running simultaneously. And that way people on the East Coast could follow the mission and follow the climax, which was the closest approach, because there were serious issues at closest approach. Would the spacecraft survive? Because the nature of the mission, 99% of the data was being stored on the spacecraft, which means if it didn't survive, there'd be no data to be sent home. So it was kind of a cliffhanger. And this is where Premiere absolutely blew up. And George did all kinds of bizarre things on the air on the last show I did with him. And then their producers called me and wanted me to move the Pluto show to the 20th of July, which I realized kind of like in 10 seconds was the same night that Art was going to come on this network with his premiere. So somebody in Premiere wanted to use me and use my bet and use the fact that I won as a weapon against Art's return. And I said, this is nuts. Because if you can't move a live event. Sterling, you cannot move a Celestial Mechanics event. It's kind of like Cronkite calling up William Paley, who ran CBS back in the days of World War II, and saying, well, William, I really can't cover D-Day next week. Why don't we move it till the week after? In other words, for someone, George, who had won, 3, 4 Emmys, the idea of moving the show to get back at Art, to use my friendship with Art, catching me between George and, it was nuts. It was totally nuts. Then I hear, through other sources, that I have been replaced as the co-science advisor, and Bob Zimmerman is now occupying that chair. And the one term that comes to mind is gobsmacked, which is an old expression my grandmother used to use. Because this is not the way friends operate. This is not the way professionals operate. This is not the way someone who's helped create a show and an elan and has been consistently there with stories and details and coverage of all kinds of things the Coast would not have had. The fact that I was kind of unceremoniously just kicked over the edge of the Titanic. If this happened in a movie script in Hollywood, the script would be turned down because it's too nutty to be believed. But in fact, this is exactly what's happened. So Art very graciously said, well, Dick, why don't you do a show over here? And that's why we're in here on the other side of midnight.
Thank you for that.
People love soap opera.
We live in a day where everything's upside down, and
truth
is stranger than fiction.
You think? Look at the political landscape. See, my approach to this kind of gets into the arena that we're going to get into when we go past the top of the hour and we, hit our next break. I want to talk about the philosophical underpinnings of real alternative energy, the stuff that doesn't come out of a pond or out of, the sun, but in fact comes out of the ether, out of the fabric of space-time. And somehow there are folks who have learned how to tap into it.
Yeah.
And yet, Sterling, you've been at this, 13 years?
Yeah.
I've been at this probably twice as long. Why can't we go to Kmart and buy any of these alternative systems? After decades. In fact, after almost a century of talking about this stuff, why can't we buy one?
Yeah, I think it really does have the answer to that question is what I was saying earlier, that we get the government and the energy we deserve. Free energy is about freedom. And right now we deserve tyranny. And until
wait. How can you say we deserve tyranny?
We as a people, generally speaking, have sown corruption And the natural result of that is captivity. Captivity, another word for that, is tyranny.
What do you mean we've sown? I guess I'm at a loss for words. It sounds like you're blaming the victims. Because it's obvious we have a two-tier planetary system. We've got the tenth of a 1%. That's the Trump factor. We have everybody else, and you're saying that everybody else is responsible because they have been taken over by the tenth of a 1%, and they're basically operating in a slave society, but they're the ones who are at fault.
I'm talking along the lines more like Moses on the 10 Commandments: thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, thou shalt not, etc. And along with that metric, we are wicked.
See, well, you're introducing terms I'm not familiar with, because it sounds to me like you're looking at this from a religious perspective, that we're basically getting what we deserve because we're bad people. Is that what you're saying?
Because we are not stepping into our goodness and our godness, which is badness.
What do you mean? When you say we, who's the we, Kemosabe?
Generally speaking, society as a whole.
Because they don't know any. Though to them, this stuff we're talking about tonight, energy that comes from nowhere, that appears out of space, that can be co-opted by a device that resonates, that you don't need to plug in, you don't need wires, you don't need a grid. It just, you turn it on and it runs and it runs and it runs. That to most people is science fiction. It's fantasy. It's pseudoscience. They have been controlled into thinking this freedom is unobtainable, and you're telling me it's their fault.
Yes, I am. I am saying that not the knowledge is their fault, but that because they've been suckered into the football games and all the distractions that the conspirators put in front of them to get them distracted so they don't step into who they're supposed to be.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to pick this up after the top of the hour, because I've got a few more questions, because I don't think you can blame humanity for being enslaved by the people who are living off humanity. We'll be right back. And we're back tonight on The Other Side of Midnight with my guest, Sterling Allen. And we're engaged in a conversation, and Sterling just raised something kind of intriguing, at least to me. You're saying that the human species is at fault for not properly understanding and accepting and putting into practice these energy alternatives that don't require fossil fuels or even conventional sources like solar.
I wouldn't put it quite like that. I would put it more like that. I wrote a book back when I was, my first stint. I talked about when I was at BYU and studying virology, and then I changed major. I went off and I wrote a book, and I compared the macrocosm history of the world to the microcosm individual progression in life. And
that's like something you can just dash off in a weekend?
Well, I spent about a year working on that.
Oh, my.
Yeah. And it was a fascinating study where basically, to summarize it for the purpose of what we're talking about right now, he who commits sin is a servant of sin. When an individual goes wayward, they become captive, and addiction is a good example of that. If you go against your higher knowledge and you go into things that you know you're not supposed to be doing, very often you become addicts of that. The void is created in your life, and you get suckered into something and you become captive to that. On a national level, that's called tyranny. And so the tyranny that we're getting right now in the world, around the world, that the New World Order has been propagating and pushing through the Illuminati and 911 and all that kind of stuff, is a function of the societal turning from God, turning from goodness, and accepting bastardized things. And so, yeah, the conspirators are there and they're to blame, but so are we for accepting it and letting it, basically creating the void that they come and fill.
But Sterling, look, if you live in a society where media is not free, where except for these glimmers of light in the night represented by the programs on this network and other almost like pirate radio, Revolution Radio is one that I'm thinking of, and there are many others. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at corporate media, that program, that agenda, that copy that is read to you all day is part of a system designed to keep the audience at a certain level of belief. And it's only the odd individual that kind of breaks out of the pack and begins to ask questions motivated by, in this case, literally God knows what, that rises to another level. So to me, to indict everyone for ignorance which has been imposed from outside by a political system to which they're not even aware, because all the normal outlets of people that would be looking for perspectives on what's going on, if they're all seeing the same controlled message, how, unless they're really inculcated into thinking outside the box, how do they even begin to ask the questions to break out of the mindset that they're living in their matrix?
You would be hard-pressed to find anyone on this planet right now who does not have an acquaintance who has been trying to get at them to tell them, hey, you ought to go look at this, or have you considered that? That everyone has a voice in their ear that says, wake up.
Yeah, but we have voices telling us all kinds of stuff. If you saw the email I get every day, 99% of it, quoting Sturgeon, is crud. It's just noise. No human being can follow all the leads down all the rabbit holes because you'd wind up never doing anything else.
But everyone has a conscience, and that conscience is pricking at them saying, hey, what you're doing right now is not right.
Well, the conscience is they're looking around and they're seeing that nothing is working and it's working less and less and less. So obviously the system is broken, but will those with the proper tools to fix it or transcend it or leave it behind as obsolete and invent something new that works, will there be enough of those people to embrace the new before the old winds up collapsing and doing us in?
How many people did it take to win the Revolutionary War?
Well, now you're on my favorite metaphor. I say consistently it only takes 2% of a revolution. I think we are far past the 2% when it comes to alternative energies and all that. So again, why can't I buy this stuff at Kmart? It's not like we've been only discussing this since Tuesday morning.
Well, I see a shift coming. There's a prophecy in Isaiah 66.
But wait. We've heard this for years, Sterling. Oh, it's coming. Mm-hmm. We're going to have Nirvana's going to be here, the promised land. When I said to you before, what does it cost for a home commercial solar system? You said it's now about $15,000 and it used to be $30,000. And that's over a period of what, 15 years?
Yeah.
I thought the numbers were a little more dramatic. I thought the price break, the point spread had really changed dramatically in the last 5 years to where you can get a home system for a lot less. But, I don't follow this like you do, so I could easily be wrong. I just think blaming the victim of a conscious... look, Citizens United, which is the big Supreme Court decision which allows unlimited money by the tenth of a tenth of a tenth of the 1% to totally screw up politics as fragile as it used to be in terms of representative government. We now live in a society where everything can be bought. This election, you're looking at basically how much will this election for President of the United States cost either party, or maybe there'll be a third party. Maybe Trump will run as an independent. The point is it's all coming down to money. You can buy political hegemony if you spend enough money. And now they're arguing, well, does Trump have enough money to actually buy the election? They're actually talking in the mainstream with a straight face about buying the election. So if you're looking to the political process to change something, I don't think that's the direction where change is going to come from. I think it's going to come from the fact that people are literally going to want something that will be reliable when the world is falling apart. And the question then is, are there any commercial systems they can turn to which are truly off the grid, truly alternative, and in fact, in that deadly area of conversation, the so-called free energy domain, are there any systems in that category which people can either put together or actually buy outright?
Yeah, and the number of things percolating has been increasing, meaning things that are getting close to market. But now, the thing that's different about tonight...
Why don't you give us a list, then, of those things that are percolating?
Okay. But I want to finish a thought that I started before the top of the hour.
Okay.
And that is that, when I was on Coast, it was always like, for the last 13 years, we've been perpetually 5 months from market. It's like, when are we going to see any of these actually make it to market? Mm-hmm. And the thing that's different about tonight on this conversation with you is there's actually something that has made it. That you can actually go and you can buy, and it's going to show up, and people are actually it's actually materializing in terms of the 5 kilowatt one has not made it to a person's home yet, but the ones that are the utility scale one has made it.
This is from the German company Roche.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, we've passed a milestone here, which is really exciting, that now something that is exotic, that is not supposed to work, but does, and has a price point that is more favorable than solar and wind because it's 24/7 and it doesn't have the intermittency. The initial price point is going to be a little bit more. The capital cost is going to be a little bit more than solar because, these things are not cheap, but the production price of when you amortize the cost of making the energy is going to be 3 cents, kilowatt hour kind of thing.
Well, you've been following the so-called cold fusion controversy, I presume, for the last...
Yeah, it's wonderful, very exciting.
Okay, well, I got in on it in '89 when the first experiments were done, and my old friend Gene Maloff wound up, assuming command of Infinite Energy, and we had long and very productive conversations for years and years and years until he was murdered in 2004. Since 2004, there has been some modest improvement on the political front in Washington, namely the Department of Energy and other grantees are looking at cold fusion, or LENR, low energy nuclear reactions, as a potential energy source as far as I can tell. But we don't have any standalone commercial systems that you can go to Kmart and buy, put in your basement. It won't cost you $15,000. It may cost you, like a big screen television, a couple of grand. That to me is where the commercial market will take off, and I don't see any takers yet in that arena.
Have you been following Andrew Rossi?
Yes, the ECAT system.
Yeah.
But it's so confusing. It's so... Give us a thumbnail. First of all, define what he's doing, and then tell us what the status is tonight of Rossi and the ECAT.
Yeah, Andrea Rossi is basically taking hydrogen and nickel, and there's I think titanium he has in there as well, and he has a reactor that is producing much more energy than what it takes to maintain it and to get it going in the first place.
This is in the form of heat.
Yes.
This is heat. This is not coherent electricity. This is heat.
Correct. They're producing heat, and then you would use that heat to either
vaporize water or some other fluid, and you use it to turn a generator, etc., and you produce power like we do with nuclear reactors, which don't produce nuclear power with the atoms. They produce nuclear power by boiling water.
Except in this case, there's no radioactivity. So, there's no, you don't have this, long half-life that you have to get rid of and hide in Yucca Mountain.
This is with Rossi's ECAT system. What does the ECAT stand for?
Energy catalyzer.
Okay. And he's assuming the nickel in the hydrogen in the generator or the battery or whatever the box is that these reactions take place is what's being catalyzed or is actually the catalyst?
Yeah, the actual physics and the explanation of what's going on, he is withholding the explanation, but there's a lot of hints and whatnot that are going on. And I haven't, so because we don't have that information, we can't give a model of here scientifically what's going on. We don't have.
In other words, Rossi, as the inventor of this proprietary technology, is withholding the details because it's proprietary.
Correct.
But doesn't he have to register the details to get a patent?
And he has done that, and the patent now, if I remember right, is because it was not awarded, it was declined. I'm not sure if they've actually published that.
Are we talking a U.S. patent on this now? Because he's out of Rome, right?
He is out of Rome, but he lives in Florida, and he's doing most of his stuff he's doing out of Florida.
Oh, maybe we should talk to him. And
industrial, you should. His English is pretty good. It's not too hard to follow.
So he is kind of at the head of the runway when it comes to commercial cold fusion generating systems that would be priced and looked on the size for an individual home, right?
Correct. He's way ahead of the pack.
Can you buy a system?
Not yet.
But when? And how?
Well, he's been teasing us with those deadlines since 2002 when he did the demonstration over in or was it 2000? Yeah, it was 2002. The demonstration over in Bologna, Italy. He had a press conference, and then he's been dangling the carrot out in front of us, that perpetual carrot of when we're going to be seeing these things commercially available. But, actually...
what is his latest time horizon? If the other side of midnight wanted to buy or get a beta test of his system and put it in place here and then report on it. I mean, we've got other companies, other corporations that have contributed to this fledgling radio outfit. Like, I want to thank the Telos Corporation because they have donated the $2,000 to $3,000 codec that we are using to transmit. And I just want to tell everybody that it's working wonderfully. It came all nicely programmed. Keith Rowland spent quite a bit of time doing that. Shipped it out. I turned it on, plugged things in, and it worked. So if Rossi would look at us as a kind of a beta test platform, we could report to people how it works and what the efficiencies are, and hint, 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 hint.
Yeah. Well, if you were talking about buying a megawatt system, which is in a shipping container, 20-foot shipping container.
I don't think I need that yet. Maybe to go to Mars someday, but we don't need a megawatt. We just need 15 kilowatts, reliable.
Right. And they're not there for making those size, but they are. You can buy a 1 megawatt system.
From Rossi?
Yeah.
Really? Who's buying them?
Through Industrial Heat is their buyer they are part of a $2 billion fund. They spent a year doing their due diligence, and they bought off last year. So they're the ones who are doing all of the financing, and there is a company who in the United States has installed one of his 1 megawatt systems, and once they have all of their ducks in a row, they're going to be doing a press conference, hopefully the end of this year, showing and giving the media access.
So in about 6 months, a major facility, I mean, a megawatt is a lot of energy. So we're talking what? A mall, a small city government, conventional power distribution company like, Con Ed. Who's bought this? Do we know?
Something I don't know that yet.
Well, how do we know it's real then?
Well,
I mean, this is a rumor, or is it for real?
No, it's for real.
But if you can't tell me who it is, how do we know it's for real?
See, I went over to Bologna in 2013 and saw their prototype plant running self-looped, half a megawatt, producing power, being tested, and there were 30 of us who were there seeing the thing. We took turns going in there because there's safety concerns, and they didn't want us all in the room at the same time because it's nuclear and yada yada yada. But that was a landmark demonstration, and that was several years ago.
But we don't know who in the United States has bought a 1 megawatt facility and is going to be holding a press conference toward the end of the year about it.
Correct.
Well, obviously that then is something to look forward to. That would be a major game changer. If that were to come out based on the ECAT system that I'm familiar with, which is cold fusion, which is energy out of the ether, somehow that's the mechanism, then that would be a major, stunning political breakthrough.
It would. Absolutely.
So what other activities are you run all these organizations. What are these organizations, like you have something called PES Wiki? What is that?
That is basically the Wikipedia of free energy.
Okay.
That's hence the name Wiki. PES Wiki, Pure Energy Systems Wiki.
Okay.
And
what is that? Some kind of a clearinghouse of everybody who's doing work in the engineering field, in the commercial field, in the consumer products field, whatever?
Yeah, we focus on exotic free energy technologies, but we also have solar and wind and all the other conventionals. We do both conventional and non-conventional there. But we focus, especially in the last few years, been primarily doing exotics.
When you say exotics, now you're talking not solar, not wind. You're talking things that are somehow anchored in the ether, right?
Well, the ether is one of the plugs. There are 25 plugs into the will work of nature of the exotic sort and 25 of the conventional.
So are there 25 of each or just 25 in total?
25 of each.
Oh, all right.
50 total.
Why don't we list them? Why don't we go down the list?
Well, okay, let me pull up the page.
Well, see, most people don't think about energy. First of all, they don't think about energy. And the second, they don't think about it in this context. They want to go to the wall, they want to flick a switch, and they want the lights to come on. They don't really want to know how the power to power the lights got to them. They just want to be able to flick the switch. So how do we create the consumer demand for this alternative that will stand up against the enormous billions of the Koch brothers and their selling of fossil fuels and the impossibility of any of these technologies or sciences?
In the conventional column, there's 25, and I'll go through it alphabetically. Animal-powered,
okay,
beta voltaics, bioelectricity, biomass, biofuels, biodiesel, algae are number 4. Conservation is one of the conventionals.
Mm-hmm.
Fuel energy, geothermal, turbine, and geothermal mass, as in ground heat. Those are each separate. Human-powered is another one. Hydrodynamic or hydroelectric dams. Hydrogen in nuclear/fusion. I'm putting that as a clean one, even though, ocean energy, ocean thermal, tidal ocean tide, ocean vent, ocean wave. Those are separate ones, all separate. 18 is piezoelectric. Run of the river is another one. Salt fresh water mix is another one. Solar is one. Thermal energy, thermal ionic.
Thermal energy, you mean like ocean thermal?
Yeah.
Okay.
Vibration energy from the environment. Waste to energy and wind is 25.
That's a lot of different sources.
Yeah, those are each separate plugs into the wheelwork of nature.
Let me go back to you love that phrase. Let me go back to the fusion thing. What do you know about the Lockheed Martin announcement a few months ago that they have a workable prototype tabletop hydrogen or deuterium fusion, which is the same thing basically, fusion reactor?
I don't know a lot about it because that's not exotics, and that's where I've been focusing lately.
Okay. So do you think that they're for real or just a marketing hype?
No, I think there's something there.
Well,
I think it's something we should be following.
But it's like such a breakthrough. I mean, it kind of reminds me of Farnsworth. Remember the Farnsworth back in, I think it was the 20s, who had a tabletop fuser? I may be getting the time wrong. But it sounds like the ideal in terms of conventional physics, where you smash things together and you get energy out. That's how a fusion reactor is supposed to work. The thing is, they're claiming something on the order of something that could power a house. So it sounds to me like that's one of those coming up on the inside that you should be watching, because it may not be exotic in the sense of, tapping into the torsion field or whatever, but it's pretty damn exotic when it comes to coal or oil, and it wouldn't pollute, and depending upon what they do with the neutrons. It sounded to me like they were looking at a totally different technique that would not produce high radioactive neutron loads.
Yeah, that is definitely one that needs to be followed. That's good stuff. But we're probably talking 10, 15, 20 years before we'll see that.
No, wait. We've been hearing the 10, 20 years for fusion for as long as I've been paying attention, which is literally more than half a century. So that distant, finish line, it keeps moving. The goalposts, if we're going to use the football metaphor, the goalposts have kept moving. So every time we have a fusion discussion, it's always 10 to 20 years. There's something wrong with that.
Yeah, the thing that's cool is that cold fusion, on the other hand, is going to be much that those goalposts are moving, but they're moving not as much and as what we're talking about.
Okay, is there any other commercial system poised on the edge in the cold fusion arena other than Rossi and the ECAT system?
There are quite a few.
Like?
Defcalion, and
now he's in Greece, right?
Right.
What's the basis of his system?
Very similar to Rossi. He's a spin-off.
So he's also using nickel as a catalyst and hydrogen in a box, something like that to produce heat?
Right. And then there's the guys over in California. What are they called? They're also cold fusion, and they're very exciting. So there's about 5 or 6 of the cold fusion contenders that are very, very exciting.
Okay. So you've named 2, Decalcolin. How do you spell that?
Defcalion.
Defcalion. Mm-hmm. And he's there's no way you can buy his system here, right?
No, they're going to be focusing. They want to do power plant retrofits like stranded assets that are like, because they're so expensive. I mean, and dirty. And these power plants got all the infrastructure. Let's just go in and replace their boiler with one of ours.
You mean like the San Onofre power plant in Southern California?
Yeah, along those lines. Mm-hmm.
The nuclear power plant, yeah. Okay, so we've got 2 systems.
Brillouin's another one.
Now, who is he?
Brillouin.
Yeah, who is he?
Who are they?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what. Why don't you think about that? We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. Okay. Stay tuned. Midnight, if I turn the pot up. Getting all this stuff, I mean, the old jokes about a one-arm paper hanger are really true. And I can't imagine what's going to happen when I get into feeding music up the line and, rattling Keith's cage with something that he's not expecting. Anyway, before the break, we were talking about the listing of companies where you can actually go maybe and get a commercial device. We've got ECAT. We've got Ducaline in German. Ducalion. Well,
Defcalion.
Defcalion. See, if I don't see something spelled out, I'm really bad at spelling. I like to, see it, maybe sound it out and all that. So we've got what? One system which is almost on the verge of commercialization, and we have several other systems you say that are coming up. Anything domestic in the United States? These are all European systems you're talking about.
Yeah, there's about the guys over in. I have to. My blood sugar is a little bit low right now. I just took a drink of juice, and so that'll be resolved hopefully within the next 15 minutes.
See, what we need is a free energy device you can simply wrap around your headband or stick on the back of your back or something like that. Anyway, are you up for taking any calls? Would you like to talk to some folks who I'm sure have tons of questions, because the concept itself of free energy, again, is so off-putting to so many people because they know it can't be free.
But we've already talked about that, so I don't know why you bring that up again.
Because I've been looking at a field that has not really gone anywhere for much of the time that I've been looking at it, and I've been trying to figure out why. In other words, we live in a culture, and you can see this in the political process right now. Money basically can buy almost anything. So if the physics is there, if the technology is there to actually create energy out of apparently some other place, some other dimension, some other tapping into the invisible zero-point medium that surrounds us, how come in the 50 years I've been watching this field, nobody successfully brought even one of these gadgets to the marketplace? And why is it going to change in the next, 5 years, 2 years?
Well, the thing is, we already that is no longer true that it hasn't made it to the market, because they have now.
Yeah, but you still can't buy them. You say they have.
Yes, you can.
Where can I go out tomorrow and buy one?
Roche.
And what can I buy? Rossi?
Roche is already in the market.
I'm talking real free energy, not the...
No. They have made it.
Well,
you can go buy one.
All right.
For sale.
So we need, before the end of the show tonight, a web link so we can actually all go and look at these demos and look at the background and look at the specs and look at what they're saying. Because if this is a true breakthrough, if the flotation buoyancy producing energy in your backyard in a kind of a vertical swimming pool is real, then I don't understand why there isn't much more market penetration and much more coverage, and why you can't freely Google something like this and have it pop up that you can go and buy one. I mean, if it weren't for you, we wouldn't know about this.
Yeah, and that's why I'm here.
Let us take, Mr. Miller has been so patient. Nick Miller is calling. Let me give out the numbers. Our Skype number, or our Skype ID, or our Skype name is Enterprise Mission. If you're on Skype, you simply put that in your contact thingy and give us a call, and we'll answer. If you want to call us on a regular telephone, we have a number for the other side of midnight, area code 505-796-8802. That's our number, 505-796-8802. And you can go to theothersideofmidnight.com, our website, and on the right-hand side, near the top, I think Rich has put up these numbers and how to reach us on Skype. because, of course, Skype sounds so much better. So let's add Mr. Miller to the conversation and see what it is he wants to say. Nick, are you there?
Hey.
Howdy.
How are you, Hoagie? How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. This is a little daunting, but I'll get the hang of it. So what do you want to ask Sterling?
I'm really enjoying the show this past week, and
thanks.
It's just been great.
We're going to get much farther out. We're going to get really outrageous, but give me a few weeks, okay?
All right, I will do. I don't really have too much to really offer. I mean, this has been riveting, but I want to ask Mr. Sterling, what does he think of the whole, what is it called, the ECAT?
Mm-hmm. The Rossi system.
What have you guys brought that up tonight?
Oh, yeah, we talked about that, the last half hour?
Oh, I guess I missed that. Oh, well, okay, then I guess this call's a bust.
No, Sterling, give him a recap. I mean, I've been looking at Rossi. I got some very weird intel early on, right after Gene died. Someone who is in the, I hate to say free energy, but it's in that area, the non-conventional technologies field, sent me an email saying that Rossi was a total fraud. And this is someone I respected very significantly, and I've been very confused by that for years because the other press I've been reading and the kind of market markers and the various reports of people who looked at the experiments and actually been there and see it work have been very different. And I've always been curious, and I never really asked this individual why he gave me this really bad report on Rossi when the data appears to be going in the other direction. Got any thoughts?
No. He is not a fraud. Absolutely
Oh,
not.
I know that now, but I'm just wondering why politically this individual tried to get me to think he was a fraud.
Because you always have your naysayers.
But this is someone in the so-called free energy field.
Yeah, I mean...
So this looks like competition. This looks like someone, what we used to call the NIH syndrome.
Yep.
The not invented here.
You've got your Brillouins, you've got your Defcalians, there are a lot of very serious, legitimate, totally validated, third-party tested, yep.
And we're all waiting so we can buy them at Kmart. That will be the public criteria when people can go out to Target or Kmart or Sears or whatever and pick one off the shelf.
It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Okay. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. And I just wanted to say a big shout out to the Paranormal Board. We're all big fans of you, Richard. We've got a big following on the X Paranormal Board.
Well, thank you. Sometime we may have to invite some of you guys on some night.
Yeah. So Thank you very much. Have a great night.
You too. And let's see who else. I've got a number calling here. Let's add him to the conversation and see who this is. You're on the air.
Hi, is this Richard?
It's me.
Hey, Richard. You put on a fantastic show.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. am I on?
You're on.
Oh, yeah, I have a question for the guest. I'm not sure what his name is.
Sterling Allen. Sterling?
Oh, yeah, okay. Sterling, I was wondering if the free form of energy that you're supplying right now is actually the hot air that's coming from your interview. Thanks.
He waited. You got to give him credit for waiting. So, look, are you still there?
No,
Hello?
he hung up.
He hung up. Okay. Coward. Because I wanted to ask him why what you are saying is so outrageous. Okay, let's go to Donald Baleska. I don't know where Donald is calling from, but we're going to find out. Donald, are you there? Hello?
Hi.
Evening or morning or wherever you are. What's up?
Richard, I'm sorry the delay got me for a moment.
Oh, yeah, turn down your device. Everybody,
When
you call, turn down your device.
It's Trey again from Atlanta.
Ah.
I was calling to ask, how do you think, your guest actually, what does he think about the zero-point energy being used by foreign governments?
Yeah, zero-point energy is one of the 25 of the unconventional.
Oh, why don't you go through that list?
Okay, let's do it. I was wanting to, yeah.
Go for it.
Okay, you want it alphabetical?
Whatever. Donald will be patient, right, Donald?
I'm very patient.
Okay.
Okay.
Shoot.
Ether, anti-gravity electrogravitics, atmospheric pressure differences, ball lightning, cavitation, dark energy, electret, electromagnetic over unity, electrostatic, GEAT, gravity inertial motors, Joe cells, LENR cold fusion, lightning, magnet motors, noble gas, orgone, petrovoltaics, plasma, pyramid power, quantum energy, radiant energy, vortex, water, fuel, hydrogen, 0 point energy. There.
Okay, here's my question. Given all those options, how come we still can't buy a gadget at Kmart?
Perfect question.
You can! Rosh!
No, I can't. You're telling me it's going to be available, but it's not available yet. That's been the story.
It is. Rosh is available.
How do you order one then? Where do you sign up? Where's the website where you put in your credit card and you get your system delivered through what, FedEx, UPS?
Well, mine's one. Go to our top5energy.com listing and you can actually get one.
Well, no. These are serious questions, Sterling, because we've been waiting and waiting.
Answer that you can actually get one. You can actually go to Rosh. You can plunk down money and you can get one that's going to be arriving after 9 months. Because it's not like, you can actually, get a power plant. How long does it take to make a nuclear power plant?
No, but if I want to go and get a Honda gasoline generator because I'm in an area which experiences power outage, we've actually had 3 power outages in the last month here. So when you're doing a show at night and you need alternative power that's going to maintain you through the key hours when you're supposed to be on the air, so I've been doing some research and looking at what's available. And yeah, I can go and get a Honda generator, but I can't go and get a torsion field system that taps into the ether that produces unlimited electricity and sits in the back of the basement over by the furnace and runs and runs and runs. I can't do that yet. And you're saying I can, and I need to see how to do that.
Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
We have all these governments that may have access to these 0 point energy solutions.
Yep.
And the fact that they're not utilizing them publicly, what do you think that says about an actual working together of these governments and what that means?
Well, all right. I'm really glad, Donald, you brought that up because here's what I see. And Sterling, please join in. Because you can't go to Kmart and get any of this yet, it means one of 3 things. One is the physics is not there, it's all a hoax, and it will never work, and we only have conventional systems. That's one possibility.
Right.
Number 2, the physics is there, but the suppression, either by government or quasi-government or super-government agencies, is so oppressive that every time an inventor or a technologist creates, like Stephen Jobs and Bill Gates, the equivalent of the internet in the garage, and they want to take it to market, they're either bought off or killed or taken out to sea or dumped out of a helicopter or something goes on and it never gets to market. That's number 2. Number 3, this is so incredibly deadly for the human race, tapping into this other dimension of energy, and it affects so much more than just turning on a switch, because from our work, if you tap into this field, you wind up tapping into what can affect human consciousness, that there has been a global agreement at some level to suppress all these technologies by whatever means because they will wind up killing the human race, and they keep holding out the lure, the prize, that it will be available, but it's like fusion. It will never come to pass because it can never be allowed to come to pass. And the quintessential movie that kind of lays this out is the film that appeared in 1956 at the diners and the drive-ins called Forbidden Planet.
Grateful.
where the Krell, who created a stunning technology, ultimately wound up killing themselves with that same technology. So those are the three options that I see. And because I can't go out tonight at Kmart, even though Sterling says I can, I'm wondering which model is, in fact, in charge.
How long do you think they can maintain their lies?
I don't know. They've been doing a damn good job for my life.
Well, I'd agree with that.
So, but you know, I'm seeing weird things at the edges. It's like the more things fall apart, the more people who are comfortable will turn to alternatives that they normally would never imagine they would turn to, simply out of desperation, out of practical. That's all they got left.
Oh,
Richard, I'm going to give you my scenario.
Okay,
different.
Sterling.
I'm going to give you a fourth scenario.
Okay, good.
Okay. And,
Donald,
and
hang on one second. Donald, are you finished with your question?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Okay, well, thanks for joining the call, and we will talk to you in the future.
Thank you, Richard. Appreciate it.
Thanks much. Bye.
Have a good evening.
The fourth
Okay,
scenario.
Sterling. Go ahead. Sterling, go ahead.
Yeah, that fourth scenario is actually a hybrid of the scenario that you were describing that puts them together in a way that I think is really amazing. I see the human being as an amazing creature with a God spirit within. Like every cell of DNA is the same DNA, but it's expressed differently depending on where it is in the body. Every human being on the planet has this God DNA within them that is expressed in various ways to do whatever it is they're supposed to do. And we are going to rise up, and we are going to have a sudden awakening that is going to totally astonish everyone. And
Well, wait. When you say we will, I'm wondering, are you looking at the same planet I'm looking at? Because I see
Yep,
it happening right now.
absolutely.
I'm looking around and seeing it happening right now.
What we're seeing right now is in preparation for Isaiah 66. It says, "A nation shall be born at once."
I get the
Something's going to
feel-
happen, like Edward Snowden disclosure time 10, that's going to get the world's attention, is going to get them to wake up and to stop buying into this New World Order conspiracy and to turn on the lights, and the little cockroaches is going to scatter, and we're going to say, no, we're not going to do your program. We're going to do it the right way, and we're not going to melt down. We're not going to go into global destruction. We are going to turn to God in goodness, and we're going to do what we came here to do, and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it.
Okay.
That's the world I see.
Oh, well-
In the next few months, we're not going to do the world melt apart in September. We're going to do something else. That's my take, and that's what I'm going after.
Okay. Well, look, let's take another call here because I've got them all backed up. It's like flights over Idlewild, and I don't want to, cheat people who've been spending quite a bit of time. So let's take this one and see who they want to talk to. Hello, you're on the air.
Hi.
On a very bad phone connection.
It's an iPhone. I can talk louder in a minute after I turn down the volume.
It's turned out
There you
exactly. And standing on one leg sometimes helps.
Okay.
What's your
I can do
question?
that. Okay, you were talking about the Roche system, the 15 kilowatt hour system. How much does it cost the industrial customers?
It's going to be less the bigger a system you have. It's going to be about a 5 megawatt system is around, what was it? I had the price in front of me today. I think it was, I can pull that up here in just a second. I got.
Okay, well, while you're pulling that up, let me ask our caller. You're looking to see what the market penetration would be in Europe if, let's say, major industrial concerns turn to this as opposed to fossil fuels?
Actually, I wanted to compare it to the Powerwall, the Tesla Powerwall.
Yeah, the Powerwall I'm looking at is what, $3,500 for 7,000 kilowatt hours, I think.
5 megawatt is 16,250 or 16,250,000 euros.
That's more like it. So that's a major industrial concern.
Yeah.
And do we have a list of corporations in Europe that are buying these, or here?
There's going to be a demo plant finished, hopefully this fall.
So the pilot plant is not really ready for prime time yet?
It's in construction. This will be a fully operating I don't know if it's going to be 5 or 100 megawatt. It's going to be a power plant. What I saw was a 15 kilowatt system. This is going to be a megawatt system, full plant in operation. And when that's done, the price is going to double. People who are buying in now get a good price.
Well, it sounds like
this thing is guaranteed. This thing is guaranteed. So when you buy a 5 megawatt plant, it is 100% guaranteed by the second largest reinsurance company in the world.
Okay, so we're
I saw the
poised.
paperwork.
We're kind of poised, it looks to me, commercially and politically, for a major statement sometime toward the end of 2015. Is that right?
Major statement as in?
Well, if this place exists and they turn it on and they invite the press and they do a full court, dog and pony show, a lot of people are suddenly going to get to see the idea of an energy source that is infinitely renewable, right?
Yeah.
And that's going to take off. That's going to go viral. That's going to become... I mean, look at the extraordinary press over the M drives we were talking last night. And it's something you cannot buy at Kmart. Definitely.
Yeah, these guys are thinking that they could have the biggest stock sell in history.
I'll tell you what. Why don't you put me on a list? So if they have like a press junket or a press briefing or some kind of press party or an event where we could actually broadcast live when they turn this thing on, we could be there. Okay?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, caller, did you get your question answered?
I wanted to find out what happened to the Navy Leonard program that Pam Moser-Boss was running. What happened to that? Did it go black or what?
Sterling, are you up on
I'm
that?
not sure. Yeah, I do know that the Navy has been very friendly to cold fusion, different from most any other government entity. The Navy has been supporting, financing, doing research, publishing, but I don't know in particular what the current status is. There's another guy who does an amazing job of covering cold fusion that's over at eCat World, e-catworld.com. Has a great daily news offering of what's going on in the cold fusion world. He doesn't cover just the ECAT, and so since he's doing such a good job, I've kind of backed off from covering.
Well,
cold
we're going to
fusion
just
as much
have
as I
to.
used
Sterling, we're going to have you back because we have run out of time. It's amazing. Again, caller, thank you for tuning in, and call us again, and we will thank you. We will all meet again at this same time in the not-too-distant future, in fact, literally tomorrow morning. I want to thank you, Sterling, for kind of giving us an overview. And when we talk again, probably sometime before this fall event, I'm hoping you will have kind of like a ready-made invitation so that we can go and take a look at this thing firsthand.
Yeah, okay.
And on that note, we will see you tomorrow morning on the other side of midnight.